Chapter 11. The Garden. Kara's Point of View. I wake up with a warm body snuggled against mine, and for one terrifyingly incoherent moment, I can't remember who's beside me or how they got there. I rarely drink or pick someone up, and I can't remember going anywhere last night. I got up yesterday, met with Shauna, and we went to the Cages Market. Oh. I look down to where two ears poke out from under the blanket. Blue had pressed himself against me in his sleep, his smaller body only just able to reach my chest with his legs tangled in mine. I can barely remember anything from last night. I recognize the groggy feeling in my head and the lack of immediate recall of the last night's events. It's one of the side effects of my sleeping pills. It's supposed to be exceptionally rare as a side effect, but I have always been exceptionally lucky that way. I hate taking the sleeping pills, but I know when I need them, and I trust myself to know that last night the pills were necessary. I pull back the blanket, too tempted to sleep in and cuddle with my new familiar. It's morning, and I have things to do. But that doesn't mean that I have to wake up my new companion. With his face slack and the rest of his body relaxed, he looks at peace for the first time since I've met him. I can't bring myself to ruin the perfection, even if the bruising does spoil the picture. I extract myself carefully, untangling our intertwined limbs and pulling away to the edge of the mattress. Blue looks tiny in that bed all alone, his skeletal frame, whimpering softly at the loss of my body heat. I can't help but smile as his hands reach out blindly, capturing a pillow. There's a contented sigh as he nuzzles into the pillow's fluffiness. Oh, I want to stay in bed more than ever. I resist. The fluffy comforter buries Blue as I tuck the covers around him again, this time leaving his face fully uncovered. There's a pink tinge to his cheeks that wasn't there yesterday. I hope that actual progress has been made, and it's not just my vivid imagination. I leave a hastily scribbled note on the mattress where I once was. I don't want Blue to panic if he wakes up and doesn't know where I've gone. I keep it short and simple. Blue, I'm downstairs if you need me. Stay in bed if you want, or if you feel like coming down, you can join me. The full light of the morning gives my eyes some difficulty adjusting as I step outside to my garden. All manner of fruits, vegetables, and herbs splay themselves out, covering every corner of my ever-shrinking backyard space, though it's the fall, nature's one last rallying cry before the winter. Loose ends tied up, and lots of maintenance to finish up in preparation for winter. I don't particularly mind. This area keeps me grounded. Seeing nature's magic helps me with my own craft, not to mention the fact that every single one of my plants overproduces. The wild magic is strong, ties into the land and currents of the wild. If I lived a good century or so ago, I would have been known as a hedge mage. I would be done with my studies, and would have lived without all the stigma attached to the title. As for now, the world just sees a hobby garden that got out of hand. Just another eccentric hobby that makes me a little odd. Just a bit outside the norms. Just like always. At any rate, all of the area's mages love to have those warm, full, homegrown ingredients to add a little extra life to their spells. For some reason, the grown-in bulk supplies never have the richness of my produce. I like to believe that it's because my plants get to know me. Attitudes and magic frequencies can have impacts on spaces. Why shouldn't they have effects on plants? My mind fades as I go through the motions, weeding and watering, paying special attention to each plant before going to what makes my garden truly special. I have a large pond in the center of all the greenery. It's a place to cool off on hot days, but it also holds one of my greatest treasures. Today there are 3 Almac swans. Each one of them shines like diamonds as they effortlessly swim to the edge near me. They're not mine. They don't belong to anyone. No one has ever been able to successfully raise Almacs in captivity. Their will is iron and their needs finite. They are creatures of magic. Every part of them holds a special value and power. Feathers gathered and eggs are 2 of the most treasured. Feathers gathered unwillingly, however, will lose all of their properties, and eggs stolen from the nest turn into nebulous pits of dark energy. Nasty business, if you ask me. Almacs generally stay away from inhabited areas, and they're usually too rare to be found anywhere other than a major source of natural magic. Yet, some always find their way into my pool. I do my best to make sure that they enjoy their stay. It brings me absolutely no trouble to set out seeds and grow tamer varieties of pond plants to make them feel at home. Just getting a glimpse of one in the wild is rarer than any gem, so it is my proudest accomplishment that they actually seem to like it here, and that they don't mind when I take a dip in the pool. I nearly had a heart attack the first time they gave me a gift. I've gotten better at being gracious about it, but the action always makes me extremely giddy. Today, the smallest of the three is bracketed by the other two, glaring from side to side to check the status of their companions as they make their approach. It reminds me of Blue, and I feel a pang in my chest. They stop just in front of me, and I try to be casual as I crouch before one of the rarest magical creatures. The two companions presented feathers to Melon entirely platinum white. The other had the sides tinged a light blue. Stars. They are gorgeous. Their tails flick happily as they make short honking noises. I thank them profusely before they turn to their friend to give them an encouraging bump. I've seen this before. This Almac is new. The veteran travelers who've been here many times before have learned I'm trustworthy, and help the new ones learn to trust me. All the nervousness probably comes from being somewhere new and unfamiliar. The Almac stretches out its neck, waiting a few seconds before I realize that it wants me to put my hand out. It isn't until then that I realize that it had an egg in its mouth. I let the oddly familiar weight settle on my palm. It is small, pearlescent, and beautiful. The Almac seems to agree as it lets out a mournful croon, nudging the egg with its beak. You don't have to. I can't stop the words coming out. I've had to watch Blue work through his fear and do things he obviously doesn't want to do or feel comfortable doing. I've had more than enough to last me my whole life. Possibly more. You don't have to give me this. Really. It's okay if you want to keep it. I don't mind at all. This is a big garden. You can build a nest here. No problem. It seems shocked at the suggestion it would stay here. I only suggest because, well, I assume it's hard to fly with an egg in your mouth. I try to joke around. Humor has always been my escape, at least when given the choice. The companions give an odd look to the middle one. Maybe broodiness is not normal in an Almac, but I've seen it in just about every other type of bird. You want this egg. I can't help the way I say it as a fact. I know I'll feel like a monster if I even consider taking it. There's no one better to have it. The Almac flaps its wings excitedly, and the two Almacs seem happy for it. They seem to have strange social workings that I'm still trying to make out, but they are uncannily smart, and I know from talking to myself in the garden too much that they understand human speech. I'm allowed to hold and cradle the egg as all of the others gather soft mosses and reeds, building a nest. I've never seen this before, and I know that over the next couple of days I'll need to get my sketchbook out here. I set the egg down in the nest, and the Almac sits down proudly, eyes shining. I busy myself with the bringing out of a notebook and detailing the encounter. Eventually, I speculate that the Almac either had nowhere safe to keep the egg, or they didn't have a high enough social standing to qualify for space in the typical nesting grounds. Either way, my heart soars thinking that they think of my little pond as a safe place to nest. Which makes me wonder why they had tried to give me the egg to begin with. Did they think I wouldn't let them stay? Wouldn't let them nest here? I watch as they chirp happily at the nest. Perhaps they were worried. Maybe they just wanted to make sure it was okay? The last two questions of the entry remain. I had looked for books on their behavior and needs years ago, though apparently I am the leading official on how they behave naturally. Most researchers speculate without ever having seen one. I have half a dozen journals detailing each encounter and speculation, everything from diet to social protocols. I haven't published a single one. If I did, they'd ask to see my proof, where I got the evidence that I didn't just make up these stories. For some almost selfish reason, I can't give up this paradise just to publish in a journal. I close the book and leave the Almacs to their ways. I have another creature that makes no sense to me. The entirety of Blue's being confuses me. Everything from how he acts, to what he expects, to what to feed him, to how to heal him. It worries me. But thankfully, there are more reliable sources for information on this. My house is a tad big, a gift from my aunt. But I, thankfully, don't have much clutter. It doesn't take much time to find my satchel with the general care book inside. I settle down on the couch like I would with any good book. The feeding section catches my attention, and I skip the first few chapters in order to take a look at that little necessity first. After all, I'm pretty hungry, and I'm sure that Blue will be once he wakes up. The first few lines make me frown. I'm fairly certain that 1 meal a day in the case of good behavior will not suffice to keep my familiar well fed and happy. It warns that table scraps, while nice treats, cannot be overused lest the familiar become proud and think it deserves food off their master's plate, insisting that letting them eat from a plate like their master's will only make them disobedient as they begin to think better of themselves. The rest is ways to deny food, or use it as a punishment, listing all sorts of training exercises and tips. One bright, highlighted try-at-home tip suggests to let a familiar eat food from a plate, having dusted a special powder on top to force them to vomit, and then to continue beating them to help them understand their place. I want to be sick. There's a recipe at the end for a simple DIY nutritious meal for your familiar. Just reading over the ingredients, I know it will be horrible. I can't help but wonder if this is the proper meal that Blue was talking about last night. Well, unfortunately for him, his master enjoys cooking and won't let him eat garbage. He deserves better. I've known him for less than a day, and I know that. I read a few more introductions and chapter titles, but the queasiness does not go away. If anything, it worsens. The book lists horrific punishments and games to make familiars more humble, more submissive, more subservient to their masters. All this wanton cruelty in the name of training. Abuse, valued and respected, for the sake of proper training. I have no idea how I'm supposed to be able to do these things. They're treated like they don't have needs, physical, psychological, or emotional. Nothing is too much, nothing is inhumane. There's nothing in place to take care of them. If one isn't working out, the book suggests putting them down or returning them. Or if they come from exceptional breeding stock, a professional training center. This is the world I've joined. I don't want this to become normal. I don't want to see my classmates beating their familiars for any of the minor incidents or infractions that the book lists. I don't want to get used to watching as others join in. I can't watch a familiar get raped out in the open as if it were nothing, solely to reaffirm another's control over them as a suitable punishment for speaking out of turn. Just imagining it, I know I'm going to be having nightmares. Stars! How long have I been ignorant to this as a way of life? Granted, my family knew nothing of the inner workings of mages, but people had pets. Sometimes they would take familiars just for the prestige. Was there any difference in how they were treated? Not according to the book. Suddenly, it makes sense that all of Shauna's familiars died. It would be hard, going by the book, trying to find the right amount of food and rewards to balance out the negligence and abuse that the book states is required. I realize with a start that everyone will have read similar training manuals. Was this kind of cruelty unavoidable? Just something I would have to live with knowing? My thoughts drift to Blue. How small and fragile he had looked in that bed. He didn't deserve to go through this. No one does. He deserves to sleep on a bed with a warm comforter, not in some closet or basement like the book says, no matter how proper it is. My definition of caring for a familiar actually includes caring for a familiar. Funny enough. But everyone else... Well, I'm not everyone. I'm quirky already. I got through my years being different, being odd, and while I had hoped it would come to an end this year, I won't do it for this high a price. What's one more differing opinion, anyway? Each section of the book restates how it is my familiar, and their behavior and treatment is entirely dependent on me. How I can customize any of these tracks the way I want. I am the owner. I am in charge. I can do whatever I want with Blue. And as terrifyingly final and open-ended as that statement is, I smile. I'm good at taking care of things. I feel lighter than I have been in a while as I leave the book to check on Blue. It's been a few hours, and I want to make sure he feels stable enough to try and eat with me. We probably won't be able to go get him clothes yet. I try not to feel disappointed. He'll have to wear some of mine until then, but I honestly can't wait to see him curled up in some clothes that fit him. Without another thought, I walk into my bedroom, ready to face the day with my new familiar.